Double Dragon is a franchise that pretty much nobody that was born in the 80s and the 90s has an excuse not to know about. Pretty much anybody who went to an arcade or had a friend over for some couch co-op knows about the struggles of Billy and Jimmy Lee as they're battling against the Shadow Boss or Roper or some guy with a weird name that I can't remember to, clean up New York after its nuclear bomb hit, or to save their girlfriend, friend, Marion, or to pretty much just make the world a better place. But what not everybody knows about Double Dragons, or not really a conclusion that everybody comes to, is that actually it draws strong parallels to the biblical story of the brothers Cain and Abel. As it reads in Genesis chapter 4, verses 6 through 12, "So the Lord said to Cain, 'Why are you angry? And why is your countenance fallen? If you do well, will you not be accepted? And if you do not do well, sin lies at the door. And its desire is for you, but you should rule over it.' Now Cain talked with Abel his brother, and it came to pass, when they were in the field, that Cain rose up against Abel his brother and killed him. Then the Lord said to Cain, 'Where is Abel, your brother?' He said, 'I do not know. Why, am I my brother's keeper?' And he said, 'What have you done? The voice of your brother's blood cries out to me from the ground. So now you are cursed from the earth, which has opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand. When you till the ground, it shall no longer yield its strength to you. A fugitive and a vagabond you shall be on the earth.'" And again, that was Genesis chapter 4, verses 6 through 12. Now, by and large, if I've learned nothing else from reading through the Bible, aside from, the wages of sin is death, and that Christ died and rose for our salvation, it's that biblically, brothers really didn't get along that often. I mean, there were a few times, such as, when Levi and Simeon were united to slaughter all of the men of Shechem for their prince raping their little sister, but by and large, brothers, they tended to do things like, I don't know, drop you in a pit, take your clothes, cover them in blood, tell your father that you died, sell you into slavery, or, just kill you. So, pro tip, if you think that your brother is, kind of crappy, just be glad he didn't sell you into bondage and tell your parents that you died. So Cain and Abel, though, they're probably the most famous biblical brothers, and their history in the Bible as we read it, it's a relatively short one, but it's one that's clearly just full of jealousy and sin. While Abel always just wanted to offer the Lord his best, you know, Cain in his sacrifices and in his service, he only gave the leftovers. And it's because of this that his offering was rejected. It's kind of in our lives, God wants us to give him our best so that he can give us our best. It's kind of like when you're tithing. My pastor always says, do you want to be blessed netly or grossly? In terms of do you tithe from your net or your gross? And you kind of, God gives us in his grace a lot more than we deserve, but what you get out of your faith walk, kind of depends on what you're willing to put into it. Um, Now, in the Double Dragons, we don't really know why Jimmy hates his brother. I mean, there's the whole coveting his brother's girlfriend thing, but the story of the Double Dragons has been rebooted and rewritten and relaunched and redone so many times by so many different teams, so many different visions. At this point, it's kind of hard to say. Um, at one point, the origin was that they were separated at birth. At another time, there was a schism in their temple, similar to Akuma and Goken in Street Fighter, or Kenshiro and Shin from Fist of the North Star. But whatever the reason, Jimmy hated his twin brother Billy. Enough to amass a giant dark army and become the reigning king or overlord of such fetching locations as downtown nuclear bomb New York, a haunted forest, a shipping yard, become the Shadow Boss, and depending on which version of the game you play, he went on to travel with Billy to beat up all of his own thugs and lieutenants to rescue Marion, who, he captured. But, at least was smart enough to have one of his guys take her so she wouldn't be like, "That's the guy who kidnapped me." Um, so that he can fight his way to the top and reveal that he is in fact the Shadow Boss, and then beat Billy in a fight over Marion, which apparently would win him her heart. Which, I mean, okay, just real quick here, two things. One, Jimmy is not a great planner. I mean, that's a bad plan. It's overly convoluted, it's overly complex, it takes too long. There's a lot of chances for failure, such as, ow, boss, why are you hitting me in the face? This is your plan, isn't it? Or one of his guys, like Machine Gun Willie, which was the boss whose name I couldn't remember, getting overzealous and just shooting him. I mean, you hired a guy named Machine Gun Willie. Also, I mean, I just gotta put this out there. There are a lot of eligible women out there. I mean, I know that New York in the year 19XX got hit with a nuclear bomb, I guess, which would kind of put a little bit of a cramp on your dating life. But I'm just saying, a girl who's going to dump you and then fall madly in love with the first guy who beats you in a fight, yeah, I think you can do better. I'm just saying, Linda seems like a nice enough girl. But getting back to it, the root of Jimmy's dark obsession, no matter what version of the story that you're going with, is jealousy. Well, jealousy and laziness. I mean, he did prefer to steal his brother's girlfriend instead of dating one of the multitude of women that served in his army, but whatever. I'm not judging. um, this is the same jealousy, albeit for a different motive, that led Cain to kill Abel, or Shin to try and kill Kin. Now, in some versions of the story, Jimmy was jealous of Billy's martial arts prowess. Um, you know, Following the storyline trope that a lot of us just really identify with, we all have a good underdog story. And Billy became a better fighter than Jimmy because of his dedication and, his drive and his focus. Not unlike, Ryu or Kenshiro, Billy was the weaker brother, so he had to really work to get the power that he had. Well, Jimmy, he was a naturally better fighter. It just came to him. And because it was so easy for him, he didn't really train the way that Billy did, and Billy became better than him, and Jimmy got super jealous of Billy. Sound familiar? Now, another version of the story has Jimmy, taken by the previous Shadow Boss. Some say the Shadow Boss got him when he was a baby. Some say they were separated, and Shadow Boss swept him up as a punk off the streets when he was a kid. But, with that time with the Shadow Boss, this fearsome, evil, demonic dude who's like capitalizing off of other people's pain, and struggles, Jimmy's pure heart was slowly corrupted over time, and Jimmy grew to hate Billy and to covet Billy's good life, and so he made a plan to sabotage it. And so, speaking of plans, let's get back to Jimmy's terribly convoluted scheme for a minute here. Overcomplicated as it is, it does have its merits. I think kind of the point in Jimmy's machinations was to hatch a way to hurt his brother as deeply as he possibly could, and he essentially kind of systematically is wiping out everything that Billy holds dear and cares for. He takes his girlfriend, he wrecks his dojo, or his house, depending on which version of the game you're playing, and he comes in and he's just like, hey, you're my twin brother, I love you, I got this, let's go get your girl back, only to deliver that final just crushing blow of being like, yeah, I'm the Shadow Boss. Come at me, bro. Which, I mean, imagine the pain and the betrayal and just the agony and the confusion that you would go through, discovering that your own brother, blood of your blood, hated you enough to do all of that to you. I mean, that's kind of sick, which, ultimately this culminates in a betrayal that if Billy hadn't been the forgiving type, would have forever severed the relationship that the brothers were meant to have with one another. And I mean, God gives us family for a reason. Even if your siblings drive you off the wall, in a good family with, a good foundation, even in one that's not so great, I mean, your siblings should be the ones that you can cleave to and hold on to and trust and know that they're going to have your back no matter what. I have a big sister by blood, and I've got a lot of, people that have been brought into our family. And, friends have come and gone, but I know that no matter what, no matter how much my sister and I we can argue, we can get on each other's nerves, even when we just are at it and we're not talking to each other for a while. I know that no matter what, my sister will have my back if I need her. She she's always there for me. And if I were in a situation like Billy with Jimmy, that would just crush me. I mean, I don't know that I would trust anybody else. After that. In a lot of ways, though, the story about Billy and Jimmy, speaking about biblical siblings, kind of also reminds me of the prodigal son. But that story is one that moment in history is one that I'm going to go into deeper when I do a message on Devil May Cry, because I feel like it's a little bit more fitting for Dante and Virgil. Um, but, with that said, there's this idea of the brother who goes out into the world and he becomes corrupted by it and he wallows in sin and ungodliness, and he just squanders all the goodness that God gave him, and I think that's a really strong parallel for Jimmy's path, where if you follow the legend in the series, I mean, the double dragons were these, throughout history, there have been these brothers who were these great martial artists who had this power, this gift to defend the world against evil, but in the history of the legend of the games, there's always been a certain point that the brother, or not always, but I mean there were times that the brother would become infused with darkness and he would leave and he would betray them and it was just all bad, and so, Jimmy was destined for greatness. He had this gift that God gave him. He and his brother were going to just fight and they were going to protect everybody, and this was their threat to resolve. But he went out into the world to do it his own way, and he lost his path, and he ended up trying to kill his brother and steal his girlfriend. But like the story of the prodigal son, the father accepted his son back with open arms, had a big feast for him and everything, and you can kind of apply that relationship to Billy and Jimmy. Okay, this game came out before I was born, so I think the statute of limitation on spoilers is out now. I'm a 1988 baby, and if you don't know the story of Double Dragons by now, I don't know if we can be friends anymore. But Billy accepted his brother back with open arms, clearly, because they're still hanging out and kicking evil in the teeth. In number two and number three. And if we look at the story of the revenge, it could have even been the tragedy that happened in the second game that brought the brothers back together. But the point is that because of Billy's forgiveness, the brothers were given an opportunity that the extreme of Cain's wrath just did not and could not afford. The brothers were given a chance to reconcile and to heal. Unlike the biblical history that resulted in Abel's death, Billy and Jimmy had a chance to forgive each other and to work their drama out, and go on to stop evil. I mean, in the second game, it was fighting the guy who hurt Marion. In the third game, it was something about stones and you were in Egypt. I don't know. I didn't get past the fourth level. But, they took out the new shadow boss and took their beloved away, which there's more of that in a moment, and stopped a madman from destroying the world. Now, real quick, the subject of Marion has kind of always been one of pretty great debate for Double Dragons fans. Following the story of the original game, Marion loved Billy, and when he defeated his brother, they were back together again. But the nature of the relationship has kind of become convoluted over time. When around the time that Marion was treated more as a trophy than as a beloved to be treasured and saved, it kind of became this thing that it was the joke in every iteration of the game across, the Neo Geo, the arcade, the Super Nintendo, the Genesis. Did I say the Neo Geo? I think I might have just said the Neo Geo. The Neo Geo, if I didn't say it. And it kind of became this little joke, this little bonus if you played with your friend at the end of the game. You would have to fight it out for Marion's affection, or whoever you played as got her in the end, and you got to just pretend that she was that person's girlfriend, I guess. And this whole fighting your friend concept was done really well in Streets of Rage later on, but if I talk about that, I'll totally get off topic. So the relationship became even more convoluted by the way that Double Dragons 2 was translated, which worded Marion's spoiler warning miraculous revival at the hands of the angel as her being returned to the brothers. And it doesn't help that the name of the song was called Rising Desire. Marion pretty much had no bearing on the story of the third and the fourth games, and the fifth one was a one-on-one fighting game that was based on the cartoon show that kind of followed that silly American cartoon mantra of, everybody loves Marion, and everybody's in the show trying to get her affections, so that pretty much wasn't considered canon. But, in subsequent remakes and reboots of the Double Dragons, which can't ever get past the first game, which I've always kind of found to be kind of ironic because the second one is kind of accepted as the best one in the series. The developers, focused on the whole who does Marion love thing to varying degrees, which kind of ended up painting this Sodom and Gomorrah-esque relationship where ultimately it feels like she's just kind of passed around between Billy and Jimmy every other week. Um, there's an example of how starkly this was contrasted in the terrible Atlas reboot of Double Dragons for the Game Boy Advance. I think it was called Double Dragons Advance, where if Billy wins, then you see Marion walking off with him, and Jimmy's all frustrated in the background. And if Jimmy wins, then Marion's all happy with Jimmy. And if there's no conflict between the brothers, like if you just beat it with Billy, I don't know if you could beat it with just Jimmy. I think you had to be Billy if you were player one. If you beat it with just Billy, then you get the ending where Marion's hanging out, they're watching the sunset, and she's super close with Jimmy and having a great time, while Billy's just kind of over by his car, just like flexing in the mirror or something. And I mean, the real kicker in that ending is that the one where Marion hooks up with Billy, which I guess is supposed to be the canon ending or whatever, you kind of can't help but notice that she has Jimmy's jacket hanging up in her bedroom on the wall, which gives the franchise the appearance that Marion's actually with Jimmy and Billy's kind of crazy. But, going back to the strongest parallel, in this message, or actually even looking at that one, for example, Double Dragons kind of has this contrast depicting Reuben's lusting after and sleeping with his father's concubine Bala in Genesis 35:22, which we kind of see that where and that led to this really hard schism in the family, and we see that paralleled with Jimmy desiring Marion so strongly. We're going to go back to the original story. That's the one I grew up with. And Jimmy wanting after Marion so badly that he destroyed his family and put a lot of people in danger. I mean, he's got thugs going around with guns and pipes and whips and crap. That's just not safe, Or in Matthew 10:21, it stated that brother will betray brother to death, among among a lot of other severed family ties that are in that particular verse. And once again, we see that, the way Jimmy dealt towards his brother is paralleled with that, and we see it even more strongly in Fist of the North Star. But, there's just that wrath and that jealousy, which, I mean, ultimately, where does this leave us? In the history of Cain and Abel, we see the death and the curse that resulted from the jealousy and coveting that Cain had. I mean, he killed his brother, he was cursed, he was cast out, he was cut off, his fruits, his labor wouldn't bear fruits, which, I mean, Jimmy was cast aside, he was pushed aside, he stepped aside, and he strayed, and none of his plans bore fruit, We saw the awful separation of God that Cain's decision brought, and the strife that followed Cain and his people for the rest of their days, under the point of them all being wiped out because of it, In the story of Double Dragons, the original story anyways, we see that, we see the good that can be brought about from forgiving of one's trespasses, and we see the strong and the beautiful relationships through God that can be forged from realizing the error of one's ways, repenting for our sins, asking God to create in us a pure heart and to renew in us a loyal spirit. And I mean, at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. So thank you for watching. This has been Gamer Sermons, we'll call it, with Xeawn R of Xeawn's Gaming Corner and Dragon House Studios. This will be a bi-weekly segment, where we'll be looking at different video games and the parallels that they have to the Bible. So I hope you enjoyed the message. Please check out www.xeonsgamingcorner.com and www.dragonhousestudios.org for my novels. Hit me up on Twitter at DragonHouseAK. And you guys take care, have a blessed evening, and happy gaming.